You, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
that you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of your ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
The expression on his face told the whole story. He was the past, and in that moment, he knew it. 60 years later, I want to thank the press corps of that time for unwittingly.
Because photos, it gives us a much better idea of what actually happened than what somebody is telling us when we can see it for ourselves. So thank you if you're researching. If you need any tips or help, get on one of the podcasts.
All right, everyone, this is my paternal grandmother, Edna. And how old were you when John F. Kennedy was assassinated?
16.
You were 16 years old.
Yes.
And you were a sophomore or a junior?
Junior, I believe, yeah.
Junior, okay. So take me back. Tell me about what happened or what you remember from that day, November 22nd, 1963.
Well, we were in class, and then all of a sudden we got the news that the president had been assassinated, and they pretty much, that ended the whole, everything as far as doing anything in the classroom, and they just went ahead and dismissed it, and they had us, we could go home, which we did, and my church immediately, I'm a Catholic, anyway, the Catholic Church immediately had a service for the president, and it was a very, very sad day for all of us. We were all crying, and it was hard to even talk to anyone for fear because of how sad we all were. We were very much, I guess I don't know the correct word would be fan, but we loved the president a lot. He was well loved in my school and in my area. So it was hard to believe that our president had been assassinated. It was very, very hard to understand how somebody could just do that to our president, because we all loved him so much.
Do you remember? Like, was the whole? You grew up in San Antonio, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you remember, like, was the whole city in a state of, like, somber sorrow?
Yes, very much so.
Everyone, like, all the flags were at half-mast.
Very much, yes.
There was a lot of mourning going on.
Exactly.
San Antonio at the time.
It was very hard for anybody, like, see, let's say if you were at the groceries, and they would, also would burst out crying because we loved our president so much, and a lot of it was so, most of us were in shock. We couldn't believe it was real, that it actually, something like that had happened, so.
Yeah, a lot of people draw comparisons. I guess the generation before you, your mother's generation, their big event was Pearl Harbor.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And, you remember 9/11 too, of course.
Yes.
I don't, of course. I was born a year after, so I don't remember 9/11 at all, of course. But was the comparisons to 9/11, was the same way that everything felt after Kennedy died similar to how everything felt after 9/11?
No, I don't believe so. It was a very, very sad thing to go through, because it was unreal that actually, we got to see it as it happened. We were watching TV, and the next thing we know, here's this plane comes and crashes in one of the buildings. And at first we didn't realize it was on purpose. We thought it was just maybe a plane that had lost its control or something. And then after the second one, we knew it wasn't for sure by then.
Also with with 9/11, there was a sense of like anger too.
Yes, very
There-
much so.
There wasn't that with John F. Kennedy assassination. I mean, there was a little bit, I guess. Like we need to go after. I mean, Oswald died. I think like what? I should have looked this up before I did this interview, but Oswald I think died the day after or the day of Kennedy died, when Oswald was shot by Jack Ruby.
The following day, I believe.
I think it was. I'll have to look this up. I should have looked this up before I did this, but what day Jack Ruby took out Oswald. Yeah, so anything else you'd like to add?
Well, they thought that Jack Ruby did it because he hated. I mean, because he had assassinated him because of the hate for him and what if he had done. But I think it was. I hate to say it, but I think it was part of the plot to assassinate the president. I think he had something to do with it because it was so unusual that we seen the Jack Ruby. Is that the name of the guy who assassinated the?
Jack Ruby's one who took out Oswald.
Okay, yeah, Jack Ruby. We watched it. They had Oswald. The police had him handcuffed already, and then the next thing you see Jack Ruby breaks through the crowd and shoots him right there in front of the police and everything, which we thought was just kind of same thing, staged, because how could you go in and take a weapon when anywhere else they wouldn't let you walk in with a weapon that you could do something like that. But,
Yeah, it's very strange. But yeah. All right. Thank you for your time.
you're welcome.
Thank you. Everyone, I'm sure y'all met her a couple months ago whenever in my dad's video, but this is my paternal grandmother, Edna. Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Program. They are doing a 10 series podcast. As of today, I think the third one dropped today. I've listened to the first two, but you'll definitely want to check out that. There are some interviews that are coming. I haven't heard them because they weren't released, but the ones that I have seen so far were really good quality, and I'm really glad that some people who represent some of the mainstream media are willing to address topics that traditionally they have not. Let's see how we're doing on time.
Well, everyone, this is my paternal grandfather, Bob Martin. And take us back to November 22nd, 1963. What do you remember?
December 1963.
November.
November 1963?
November 22nd, 1963.
I remember I was working at a company called Orville Milk Company in Orville. And I was 20 years old, just turned 20. And I'd started there when I was very young. And
What kind of work did you do?
I did operator's work. I actually operated one of the biggest condensing pans in the world. It pumped a concentrated skim 90 feet in the air through nozzles, and as it came down, all that stainless steel, it dried, and then it went to a bagging room, and you bag 100 pound every 45 to 50 seconds. And that I was the operator on that machine when I was 20 years old. But anyhow, I was getting ready to go to work, and this news came out, and we didn't have color TV. We had maybe a 21-inch black and white. And I remember they said President Kennedy had been shot, and he was at the hospital in Dallas. And just shortly after that, I don't remember the time, it might have been 1 o'clock. I was working afternoons. They announced, Walter Cronkite announced that officially he was dead. He was pronounced dead of a gunshot wound to the head. And I won't go any farther into that because I have my feelings about what happened, but I don't believe that Lee Harvey Oswald from the 3rd or 10th or whatever story was in that building did what he did. I just don't. You know what I mean? Just don't believe it. And I believe it happened otherwise. But that was a lot of tears from the family. I think everybody loved JFK because the main feelings we had for him as a president, he wasn't doing it for the money. He was doing it because he loved his country. And he also served as an officer in the Navy. And that's about all the memory I have, except the sadness that it brought to everybody. The whole world was in mourning, you know, over his death. But basically, Ben, that's, if you have anything else to ask me, I could add to it if I can remember anything. But that basically, you know, I was getting ready to go to work, and this situation came on, and I waited and I watched and prayed and looked with my mom, and you know,
I forgot to ask you. How old were you when that happened?
20.
You were 20.
I just turned 20 in September, and it happened November. What was the date?
November 22nd, 1963.
22nd. I just can't hardly remember the date, but I know it was around this time of the year, Thanksgiving time. But it was a major loss to our country, and he was taken because I believe it was conflict in the government.
I asked Grandma this. Do you remember going into town, going out anywhere, and just seeing like a veil of sadness?
Oh yeah,
everywhere.
Yeah, at work, no matter where you went, everybody with long faces. You know, we'd come to have a president that everybody thought was going to do the right things for our country, and all of a sudden, he's taken out. He's murdered, assassinated, and I think Lee Harvey Oswald was just a token, a stool,
A patsy.
yeah, a patsy, and he fired a high-powered rifle, 308, whatever it was. I think that's the size it was. That's like a 30-06. And you know, it would have killed him, but the one that killed him, and I shouldn't even say this, if you really look at the what they did show, it shows him slump forward a little bit and then shows him going back like that.
Yeah, the Zapruder film.
The impact of somebody. He got shot from the front. Really, but that's all I have then.
Did your parents say, like, did it remind them of Pearl Harbor?
No.
They didn't say anything about that?
No. But Matt, remind him of what?
Because a common thing about, like, you know, you always remember where you were, and 3 events everyone talks about is Pearl Harbor for very old people, older people.
Right.
John F. Kennedy's assassination for your generation, and then more recently, 9/11.
Yeah. Well, we were right there at home with my mother. My mother was a stay-home mom until later on she started working, but she was there when it happened. We sat there and watched it together, but just mainly her and I. My dad was at work. So that's my memory of that day. And
One.
All right, you ready? Okay.
Hi, friend.
All right, so take me back to November 22nd, 1963. Before he found out about the assassination, do you remember anything else about that day?
No, I was a freshman in high school, and I guess the day went just like any other.
And you were 14, right? Yeah, you were 14. So
Are
tell
you
me,
sure I wasn't 15?
yeah,
Maybe I was 14.
you were born in February of 49. So in November of 63, you were 14.
Okay.
So tell me about how you found out.
I was in Spanish class, and an announcement came over the loudspeaker that everybody needed to put their books away and pay attention to the announcement. And then they said that John F. Kennedy had been assassinated in Dallas, Texas, and just kind of told us what happened. And then it wasn't long after that until the bell rang, and we all just sat there. Like, I don't even think anyone was looking around. It was like so traumatic. And then the bell rung. When the bell rung and everybody went out, it was like everything was, usually everybody's hollering and yelling and, in between class changes, and it was just very silent and somber. And I didn't know a whole lot about politics, but I knew my mom and dad and all my family had voted for Kennedy. And I know that my California cousins did not like him, because when they came that summer and visited with us, they would go around saying, "Can I say this? Is that..."
Hold on, this was during the election?
Yeah, right before the election, the summer before the election.
Okay, how old were you when you moved to California?
I was in the 8th grade.
So the 1960 election was when you were still living in Texas during the election of 1960.
Yes.
Okay, so they came from California to Texas.
They came from California, and they knew that we were, because the parents all taught politics, so I only knew what I heard. But the cousins were singing.
You can go ahead and say it.
Okay. Nixon in the White House waiting to be elected. Kennedy in the trash can waiting to be collected. And I just wanted to fight him because I knew that my mom and dad didn't like Nixon. So he must have been a bad dude if mom and dad didn't like him. And I knew everybody that I heard talk loved Kennedy. So why would these California cousins be singing bad things?
Well, at the time, Nixon was vice president because Eisenhower was president.
Right.
So he was the vice president at the time.
Right. But my parents, my grandparents also, on neither side, were voting for Nixon. I think everybody we knew was voting for Kennedy. And I think... remember Kennedy saying in a speech that for the people needed to be aware, and they needed at this time in our I'm not going to say society, but this time in our nation, we needed to vote for the man, even if we had to leave the party.
So basically, you remember you were in high school and they told you to put your books down and listen. What happened after that?
Yeah, and it was just a very somber day. And basically all of the classes after that, nobody was talking and jumping around. And the trip home on the bus was quiet. And I remember seeing some of the older students, like the seniors, they'd kind of be in little groups and they'd be talking, and some of them would be crying. And I didn't cry because you know, I was a freshman. I was young. I didn't really know too much about life at that point. But I just remember the quietness, even on the bus ride home. And then walking home with the friends, because, you know, you might have 15 people at the same stop as you, and you all walk home together. And yeah, we were talking about it, just how horrible it was, and who would do that, and yeah, and then we actually, you know, saw Oswald. We actually saw that on live TV when they shot him. So we saw that on live TV.
How'd y'all react? You know, watching Jack Ruby pull that gun. There's that famous image where Jack Ruby has a gun to his chest, and he's like crouched down, and you have the two Rangers holding him.
I'm going to say that happened. I might be wrong because, like I say, I was kind of young, but yeah, we were. I was at my friend's house, Kathy. I had a sleepover, and her mother had just put breakfast on the table. And I remember her dad sitting there, and he was watching all that on the TV, and he was folding up the paper, and then he said, "Did y'all see that?" And we said, "What?" And of course, it kept showing repeats all day, and I mean, you just saw him shoot him, and that was so.
That makes sense because I remember November 22nd, 1963 was a Friday. So it makes sense you were probably at her house that night.
I remember because I think I had a Saturday night sleepover, and that was...
Yeah, because the 22nd was a Friday that year. That was Sunday morning or Saturday morning?
I think it was a Sunday morning. I may be wrong.
Because the November 22nd was a Friday that year.
And he got shot when on a Saturday?
Friday. November 22nd.
I know, I mean, but
Oh,
Oswald.
Ruby. Yeah, when Jack Ruby shot Oswald, I don't know. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah.
Oh, and I do remember my, I still call them California cousins, because even though we were in California then, we still didn't think alike. And my uncle and my aunt said that they were shopping at Fantastic Fair, and the announcement came over the loudspeaker, and everybody was just crying. And so they pulled over their cart and put their heads down and pretended like they were crying, but they didn't like him.
Oh gosh.
So they were just pretending like, so they would just kind of fit in with everybody else that really was upset and crying.
There was, yeah, you gotta remember the political climate of America at that time. If you seemed a little happy that the president was dead, you might have like, oh, you're a communist, you're a Soviet sympathizer or something.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Or you're like a spy, because there was also a big fear of spies. Remember the whole Joseph McCarthy thing, accusing tons of people of communism, was only a couple years earlier.
Yeah, that's all I remember, and I just remember that everybody loved Jacqueline Kennedy, and then I do remember actually watching the original funeral procession when little John, they called him John, saluted the flag, and I remember my mother sitting there and crying when she saw that. And yeah, I don't remember a whole lot of it, nothing politically, because I wasn't really political at that time.
Yeah, you're only 14.
Yeah.
So yeah, you lived in Huntington Beach at the time, which is a suburb of Los Angeles. So I'm sure I was asking my other grandmother Edna, she lived in a suburb of San Antonio. Going in the city, do you remember everything seeming mournful after what happened? And can you remember like going out in public, going shopping, going anywhere? There was like a veil of sadness over everything.
Oh yeah. Yeah, nothing was really like it used to be. It didn't take the kids at school long to snap back, because we're kids. But yeah, everywhere you went, you know, there were flags, there were pictures. It was real sad. The flags were all at half mast. And there were flags everywhere. It was a real sad time. And then everybody was mad at Texas because it happened in Dallas. So I don't think anybody ever said anything hateful to me, but I know they talked about Texas. The president went to Texas and got shot.
Like the Texans were being like negligent or something?
No, like Texans were bad.
Oh.
You know, went to Texas and
I mean, Texas voted for Kennedy.
yeah.
Texas went for Kennedy in the election of 1960.
So that's basically all I really remember about it. And then, you know, of course, you always see the things like Jacqueline Kennedy and her, you know, the blood all over her dress, and then staying like that when she went on the plane. It was, yeah, if you see it all as it's happening, we can see it now as it happened then, but seeing it and never going through it or anything like that before, it was, yeah, it was real hard to comprehend how that could have happened.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, I really did like Kennedy.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
We're Republicans now. That's it, maybe.
Well, I'm sure they know that, but
Okay.
well, all right. Well, thank you.
Welcome.
We'll now play Caps. Anthony J. Powers. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I got into a little bit of trouble because when I brought up Gary to sing Amazing Grace, it was supposed to be a sing-along. Gary, are you still here? Would you be willing to do it again? Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, would you be willing to sing along with them?
Yes! All right, one more time. Let's play. Let me hear you if you want to sing along. Let me hear you. All right. In honor of everyone this day. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise as when we first begun. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor.
Okay, looks like, do we have Craig Dooley? Craig, are you here?
All right, so take me back to November 22nd, 1963.
Yeah.
You were 17 years old,
Yeah,
and you were a senior in high school.
right.
All right, and what do you remember about that day?
I think everybody remembers where they were at. I was in ag class. I can't remember the exact time, but it just happened. Or at least it just happened where it was put on the news, put out there, you know. And our principal, Mr. Greer, came walking down the sidewalk. The ag shop was out away from the school. And you could see him through the window coming, and he's kind of walking fast, you know. And he knocked on the door, and our teacher, Mr. Smith, Edwin Smith, stepped out the door and closed it behind him. And we could see through the window in the door them talking, and you see it was serious talk, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of shaking their heads and talking and stuff. And then they talked for probably 5 or 10 minutes. And Mr. Smith come back in. He said, "Okay, I have an announcement for you guys. The president," and I don't think they knew at this time he had actually been killed yet, but he said the president has been shot in Dallas. And everybody's like stunned, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody, even though we was kids, we liked John Kennedy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know a whole lot about the politics of the world, none of that kind of stuff, but we still liked him and what we'd seen of him, you know. Okay?
Okay.
Now, did I see Jack Ruby shoot Lee Harvey Oswald? Yeah, saw it live. Was watching the news, and they brought him down this hallway. I can't remember if they got off the elevator or going to the elevator or whatever, but anyway, it's coming down the hallway. And all these people gathered around, and they all with little hats like Levi wears, you know, the little hat. And this one guy steps forward, kind of stooped over, and you see the gun in his hand. And he shoots 2 or 3 times, just point blank range. And they wrestled him down, took the gun away from him. And but the thing was, later we find out all those police officers knew him. You know, he's a local guy, you know. Run a club or whatever. And how he got in there, who knows? Just walked in, I guess.
So as I said, as I asked G, do you remember, I mean, you were in Cleveland, like my other grandfather, Bob Martin, y'all both lived in smaller towns at the time?
Yeah.
I mean, G and Edna both lived in big cities, San Antonio and Los Angeles. So, do you, even though you were in a smaller town, do you remember seeing or feeling or like a veil of sadness over everything?
Well, it's something we wasn't used to. Yeah, I think everybody was kind of like in shock in a way, you know, it's kind of like the president's been assassinated, you know, at least in our lifetime, you know.
Mm-hmm. I think before '63, the last assassination was William McKinley in 1901.
Yeah.
So,
possibly, yeah, I don't know. But in our lifetime, you know, we'd never heard anything like this happening. And all of a sudden, here it was. And then in Texas, too. You know.
Yeah, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Huh?
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I don't know. That's about it. It was something you never forget. It's kind of like, I was telling G one day, there are certain things that happen in your life, maybe not to you, but it's of such a magnitude that you never forget, even where you was at. The day Elvis Presley died. We were in Kroger shopping in Conroe when they made that announcement.
Oh, they made it over the loudspeaker.
Huh?
They made it over the loudspeaker?
Yeah.
Oh.
Elvis Presley had just been found, passed away. And then the Challenger crashing. You know, I had lunch duty when they come in and told us, the principal come to me and says, the Challenger crashed. I said, what? It exploded, yeah. And There's just certain, and then, you know, like 9/11, you know?
Do you remember Reagan getting shot?
Yeah.
1981.
Yeah. But 9/11, though, you know, I just retired. I was still driving a bus, and I was on my way to help my brother. I was remodeling his house. And he asked me to help him remodel it, so I was on my way over there. And we'd already heard at the bus barn one plane had crashed, and everybody at the time thought it's possibly a little plane or accident or whatever. Nobody thought of that. By the time I got to his house and was outside talking, his wife comes out and said the second plane hit. Well, then you know it's not an accident, you know. It's not an accident.
Did your parents ever tell you about Pearl Harbor?
Yeah.
Do you remember what they told you?
My mom, and well, I'm not like where they were at or anything, because back then all they had was radio. You didn't see it. Well, my mom didn't have TV growing up, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad worked in a refinery and stuff. He started working in a refinery, but it's on the radio coming out about Pearl Harbor, you know.
I'm trying to think of anything. I'm trying to remember. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But I'm trying to. We've had a lot of stuff happen recently, but nothing. I don't think anything as cataclysmic as like Kennedy or 9/11. I mean, we've had major events like COVID, but it wasn't. It's not the same as like something major happening at one time.
Yeah. Those kind of things like that stand out in your life, you know, when this kind of stuff happens, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You'll always remember where you was at, you know, what you was doing or whatever.
All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome, son.
Thank you. 60 years ago today, on Friday, November 22nd, 1963, President Kennedy drove right here onto Elm Street, came down the road, was shot in the back, and then was shot again and died right about here, where the X is, right over there. May we never forget his memory and everything he stood for.